of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please bow your heads. Heavenly Father, thank you for today. Thank you for this community. Thank you for putting us here and give us the wisdom tonight, to all of us, to make intelligent decisions. Thank you. Amen.
Amen.
Ms. Simmons, would you please?
Commissioner Holcomb,
Here.
Chairman Beanbaugh,
Here.
Commissioner Rich Parker,
Here.
Commissioner Davenport,
Here.
Commissioner Griffith.
Here.
Who is going to present the budget? Mr. Mitchell?
Are we ready to go?
Well, that's why we're here, isn't it?
We're getting them up. Lori and Brian.
Mr. Belinsky, do you just love us that you're hanging around, or what's the deal?
Apparently I do.
Apparently I won't let him go. This is going to replace some of the pages in your budget. This was page 37. Parker.
Yes, hold on, I'll tell you, that is replacing,
Page 37.
Thank you, Lori.
Is that the 100 grand that was on?
Thank you.
no, there's more than that. Let me see.
Back toward the back somewhere.
That's funny, because that's.
43, that replaces page 43.
Okay. Yep. See it, okay.
Try to climb up here.
Yeah, that's the, I'm trying to have that.
Got it.
Yep.
Whoa.
You want to do it in a slide presentation?
Got a different layout.
You can do the arrow or whatever. Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Lori Merchant, Interim Director of Finance, and today I will be presenting an overview of the 2019 proposed operating budget and capital improvement plan for your review and subsequent approval.
Mr. Chairman,
Lori,
Well, Lori, would you?
could you,
Yeah,
here, there you
please.
go.
Oh.
Thank you.
thank you.
Just wait. This 2019 budget continues to support the mission of the Utilities Commission to provide timely, cost-effective, and high-quality products and services to our customers with sound, economic, and good management.
Still kidding, it's just.
Lori, you're
It's
gonna
still-
have to,
Pull that
you're
towards
gonna
you.
put it right up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
We only want you to do it once.
Is that better?
Yes.
In the preparation of the 2019 budget, certain assumptions have been made. Revenues, 2017 actual activities was used as the base period, with strong residential development continuing, residential customer growth, and approximately 3% is included. Also, in the past few years, there has also been a significant change in the Central Florida weather pattern, as well as an increased customer conservation efforts, which has made consumer usage, thus the level of revenues, difficult to project. With these trends, we have forecast 2019 budget revenues from operations at approximately $1.6 million higher than those reflected in the 2018 budget. There is no increase in monthly fee rates to customers proposed for 2019. However, we have included funding for a rate cost of study in the budget year. O&M, total operating expenses for 2019, including purchase power, are budgeted to be 5.6% higher, or $2.7 million, than those in the 2018 budget. Purchase power expenses, including electricity and related costs from St. Lucie Nuclear Plant, are projected to be $400,000 lower than last year's budget due to cost efficiencies obtained through renegotiated supply contracts. Departmental operating expenses are projected to increase by $3.1 million. $2.2 million of this increased compensation related include additional staffing requirements and related benefits, which will be discussed in detail later in the presentation. Additional expenses for chemicals and maintenance of electric and water facilities are also included. Staffing, the 2019 budget employee count of 183 full-time staff plus 5 commissioners is 12 positions higher than the 2018 budget. The proposed details will be discussed in a moment. CIP, expenditures of $22.8 million are planned for 2019 and will be detailed later in the presentation. This amount does not include any infrastructure projects or related funding. The 2019 budget source of funds totals $72.2 million, of which $65 million or 91% is expected to come from ratepayer services fees. Revenues from electric services are projected to be increased by approximately 2% to $46.1 million, while water and wastewater revenues are expected to increase by 4% to a combined $18.8 million. An additional $7.2 million in revenues is projected to come from miscellaneous sources, including developers, CIAC, meter fees, and other funding. 2019 operating and maintenance expense totaled $51.9 million, of which 42 is attributed to purchase power of approximately $21.9 million. The remainder includes items such as wages, benefits, chemicals, and preventative maintenance expense, essential to providing services to our customers, are increased by $3.1 million over the 2018 budget. As previously mentioned, over 70% of this increase is associated with an increase in compensation, including 12 additional staff. Debt payments will be $6.2 million for the year, which approximates the level for 2018. In order to meet repayment schedule agreed to the UC's lending institutions, with capital funding and required payments to the city summing to $14.1 million, uses of total is $72.2 million. Here is a snapshot of the Utilities Commission budgeted personnel department for 2019. The count of 183 full-time employees plus 5 commissioner is 12 higher than the 2018 budget. The continuing high level of growth, preliminary new residential subdivisions, and additional personnel resources in order to adequately maintain system operations as well as meet the needs of developers. This budget includes 6 new positions in electric T&D, substation relay, 3 in water, wastewater operations, 1 in each IT, electric generation, and materials management. The pie chart on the left depicts the personnel levels by function, including support staff. Budgeted 2019 salaries and wages are estimated at $12.1 million. In projecting the personnel and salary requirements, the review of industry and market norms to ensure competitiveness was performed. This budget includes the overall 4% GWI approved at the last commission meeting, as well as reclassifications, associated salary adjustments necessary to recruit and retain electric linemen. In addition, earned promotions as well as step increases have been included. These factors, coupled with the above staffing additions, equate to the increase of $1.7 million or 16% higher than last year's budgeted salaries and wages. Currently, industry experts project that there's a 12% increase in health insurance, which has been included in this budget. The cost of other benefits, $2.4 million or $12,700 per employee, is fairly consistent with prior years. As you can see, the Utilities Commission offers a comprehensive package of employee benefits, which includes retirement plans, life insurance, and total, including health care, the cost of benefits is $4.5 million for the fiscal year 19, or approximately $23,700 per employee. The Employees Commission Capital Improvement Plan is designed to ensure the capital needs of the utility system, that is, preserving and improving the UC investments and capital assets, making the system's rehabilitation and replacements where required, and meet the needs of our customers. Recently completed electric, water, and wastewater master plan updates provided the basis of developing and prioritizing the capital projects included in this plan, along with significant input and review from each department directors as to the strategic planning requires necessary to support the best interest of the UC and its customers. The 5-year capital requirement for 2019 to 23 is projected to be approximately $92 million. As we will see on the next slide, the capital requirements are primarily for system upgrades and rehabilitation, with engineering and design for both water and wastewater treatment plant expansions planned to begin within the 5-year period. With prior year's projections still to be completed, internal funding is expected to cover just over half of the requirement, with the remainder to come from borrowed debt financing. Over 10-year planning horizon, an additional $68 million is projected to be sent, bringing the total capital requirement to $160 million. In this second 5-year period, both water and wastewater treatment plant expansions will be completed. Infrastructure projects are not included in the $160 million, are expected to be an additional $38 million and to be funded entirely by developers as it occurs. The UC has projected approximately $28.7 million in electric systems capital improvements over the 5-year period. $3.5 million is projected to complete the replacement of relays and transformers and upgrade bus protection at the substations, as well as complete the installation of a new feeder line east under I-95 in order to serve new subdivisions proposed in the Western Corridor. An additional $4 million is anticipated for a 115 kV transmission line to ensure system integrity between Airport and Field Street substations. $4 million is required to increase capacity with large conductor, wire, and the replacement of undersized poles, primarily in the area of Turnbull Bay and Pioneer Trail. Routine expenditures for items such as conduit, transformers, meters, system strengthening, replacement of rolling stock, and underground cable are expected to average $2.3 million per year, or $11.5 million for a 5-year period. An additional $1 million is budgeted for alternative energy sources, including renewables. Water system improvements are projected to be $25.7 million over a 5-year. Water treatment process upgrades, including replacement of undersized and outdated lime silo, hydrochloride conversion, and aerator replacement, are expected to cost $6.7 million. Increasing raw water supply with new wells and mains is projected to cost $3.7 million. A redesign and realignment of the subaqueous crossing to the South Causeway will require an additional $2.5 million in funding. FDOT and other local agencies' road relocations will necessitate $4.7 expenditures to reposition water lines. Routine water expenditures such as water production and distribution equipment, rehab, and replacements are expected to average $1.1 million per year, or approximately $5.7 for the 5-year period. Wastewater and reuse system improvements are projected to approximate $31.5 million over the 5 years. Wastewater treatment process and facility upgrades, including expansion of the effluent pond, replacement of high service pumps, and sludge disposal equipment, are expected to cost $5.9 million. The rehabilitation of gravity sewer and manholes in aging areas, including systems 10 and 11 along Riverside, together with the associated lift station, is a significant expenditure of $9 million. Additional aging and outdated lift stations will be upgraded at the cost of $7.5 million over a 5-year period, including Master Lift Station 60, which pumps 80% of the entire area's wastewater flow. FDOT and other local agencies' relocations necessitate $3.4 million of expenditures to reposition wastewater lines. Routine expenditures such as wastewater production, collection equipment, rehabilitation, and replacements are expected to average $500,000 per year, or $2.8 for the 5-year period. IT administration projects are $5.9 million for items such as computers, servers, related hardware, including upgrades to accounting and billing software. Continue proposed upgrades to this office building of $1.6 million is included in this total. The column to the far right shows the projected capital requirements the subsequent 5 years beginning in 2024, totaling an additional $68 million. During this period, it is expected that new reverse osmosis membrane technology water plant will be constructed, as well as enhancements to the current lime softening treatment facility. In addition, an on-site capacity expansion plus facility upgrades will be required in the wastewater treatment plant. As I previously mentioned, of the approximately $92 million of capital requirements over the current 5-year period from 2019 to 2023, plus the $22.6 million prior projects, approximately 55% can be funded with a combination of existing legally restricted amounts and the renewal and replacement, plus the mandatory 8% of net revenues annually, and as required in Resolution 2878, and anticipated additional funds as an expected total of $40.4 million. With these sources, a shortfall of $51.4 million will exist from which the fund necessary to utility system improvements. Debt in the form of revenue certificates or bonds will be required in order to make up this difference. This concludes our presentation of the 2019 budget and capital improvement plan.
Excuse me, thank you.
Lori, the stuff that you just read, where is that? In our document?
No, this is just my little cheat sheets because I don't speak off the cuff. These are like my little notes.
Okay. It would be great. I would like a copy of that because I can't grasp it all. If it's okay with you all, I've had 3 meetings with staff. There's a few things I'd like to bring to y'all's attention so you can understand where some of my concerns were, and I've learned a lot in those 3 meetings. And I want to thank staff. My first meeting was with Brian and Lori. And then my second meeting was yesterday with Lori and Derek and Mr. Mitchum. And then today, just a little bit for 30 minutes before this meeting, I met again with Lori and Brian to try to understand the things that I still did not understand. So the first meeting that I had, we did come up with some things in this budget document that we thought needed to be corrected. There was a few things that needed to be reworded. A big thing was that in the budget document, and let's see where it talks about, on page 6 under restricted funds, you're indicating that the renewal and replacement fund is a restricted fund, and that's an unrestricted fund. I mean, are you going to make those changes in this document?
They are going to be in the completed approved budget.
Okay,
pack.
so
We've already made the
when
change.
will we have an opportunity to see the final version that's going to be presented to the city next week?
Yes.
When, will we get to see it before it's submitted
Yes.
to the city? When will we get to
As
see
soon
it?
as Brian and I get going on things. I mean, we've been really working. I mean, we can have it together. It takes, some of our staff to kind of put it through and page number it and make sure everything's good. So, and reissue it, I would probably say Friday at the latest. This Friday.
Okay, so that was probably the biggest concern I had, is that. the
And those
renewal-
changes all have been made already. I
Okay.
just haven't
Okay,
printed
but I'm
it
also
and
trying to
plus-
share with the fellow commissioners.
Because I wanted to make sure that, we're all good with this before we keep killing the
Okay.
trees.
Okay, and one of the things I'd also like to know and read into the record is that it's my understanding that we haven't had a rate increase since 2006. Is that correct?
except for wastewater. Somebody else could probably
Yeah,
speak a
just
little bit
water-
more.
Water increases twice in the last 5 years.
Okay, and water increased twice in the last. Okay, and in 2012, we had a study done, a rate study done, in which it had been recommended that we do a 4 to 5% increase in electric rates. And then I learned tonight from Brian, that that study also recommended that we do an increase in water rates, Brian,
Correct,
that we did not do. Correct?
correct.
Okay, and what was that?
8.
An 8% increase? Okay, so since we have in the 2019 budget, $140,000 budgeted for another rate study, I'd like for you all to calculate for us as a commission so that we understand how much it cost us to not do the rate increases that were recommended in 2012. I'm not questioning that decision. I personally was not part of that decision, but I think it's really relevant for us to know, especially, I don't know, the last one we did cost, what, $110,000, and we chose not to follow it. So, you know, I want to know, there is a result every time we make a decision. And so the revenue that we did not collect over the last 6 years, like just for electric, I did a quick calculation. I ran my thought process by Brian this evening. I used $44 million as my number for electric revenue. That's what it was a couple years ago. I'm thinking a couple years ago, we hadn't really started to experience the growth that we're experiencing now. So the study was done in 2012, so the first year that the increase would have gone in would have been 2013, so we'd be looking at 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. So it's 6 years worth of revenue. If we did a 4% increase in electric over that 6-year period, it would have been $10.5 million. If we did a 5% increase, it would have been $13.2 million. And Brian agreed that, you know, that was a reasonable calculation. It's not exact, but it's probably close. So I wanted this commission to understand how much revenue, how much money we're choosing to borrow over the next 5 years. $51 million, we're going to have that shortfall. And if we would have taken a different path 6 years ago when we did that rate study, we would have had not to have borrowed as much, because it wouldn't have, I realize if we build more, there's an additional money that would have gone to the city. I guess that's the 8%?
6%.
6, okay. So it's not an exact calculation, but it's a relevant discussion, and I want to know what that is, and I want to be able to read it into the record so it's there, like for posterity. The other thing that really concerned me when I sat down, so that you can understand, is that, you know, when I was going through that first page that I told you was replaced, we got a new one. Page 43, that's part of our budget document. You know, when I was sitting down in my first meeting and going over it, what Brian explained to me is that, as an example, on page 43 of our book, if you look at that first column for 2019, it shows $22.8 million for 2019. But something that I didn't understand, and I wanted to make sure that my fellow commissioners understood, is that $22.8 million that's shown up for 2019 is projects that for the first time are being approved for 2019. It does not represent all the checks that are going to be cut fiscal year ending 9/30/19 to pay for capital improvement programs. It does not include another $22 million worth of projects that were approved by other commissions in other years. Because the way that the budgeting has always been done has been on a project basis, which I get. I get that we do big projects and they generally take, you know, over a year, you know, they take a while, some of them. But what I was trying to get at was, I want to know that, yes, we approve projects, but I want to know how much cash is actually going to go out the door fiscal year 9/30/19, for what, and where are we going to get the money to do that? Okay, so in my first meeting, it was like, no, but Bernadette, it doesn't include all those other projects. And I'm like, but I don't know what those other projects are. And they're material, so show me that. So then, it was just tonight, you got a new sheet of paper that shows prior projects are another $22 million. But the first thing that we got, if you look at the very, very last page of our budget book, that is an analysis that shows the projected R&R fund activity. To refresh y'all's memory, okay, this R&R fund is the net income monies. We got 8% of revenue going in there, and then at the end of the year, whatever net income we have left goes into this R&R fund as a result of this resolution at some point that was done. So it is not the restricted R&R fund, which is legally restricted as a matter of law or when the money was actually collected, like the capacity fees. Okay, the capacity fees are legally restricted because they're collected for just that purpose, and they can only be for things of that nature. So I also wanted to get a good handle on, okay, we're going to have all these expenditures, but how much of it is being funded by our unrestricted monies, and how much of it is being funded by our restricted monies. So just to show you an example, is that this very last page, which we have, which is when I went over that first meeting, it said, okay, at 9/30/19, we're going to do all this stuff, and we're going to have $5.6 million left in the R&R fund. But then when I ask questions and say, but I still want to get it. I want to understand all the money that's going to go out the door when, including projects that were approved in another year. Then I got a new analysis, which I don't think you all got. This is what I got at my meeting yesterday. And it projects that the R&R fund will be $13 million in the hole. So from my first meeting to my second meeting, we had an $18 million swing because I asked the question about what about the projects that were approved in another year. So that's when, and then I met with Derek, and he was really helpful, or at least I know he really, really tried to clear things up for me, and it's better. But I'm sorry, you guys. I'm a little bit overwhelmed and a little bit frustrated.
I'm getting overwhelmed listening to you, Bernadette. I mean, when you start talking, you're sitting up here as a commissioner and you're hearing that many millions of dollars of a swing. It's like, because what I think that it's important to understand is that the way things have been done here is that everything has been budgeted on a project basis. So the best way that I can bring an example is, okay, Jack, let's pretend you're building 4 dealerships. I understand completely. You're going to take a look and you're going to come up with a budget for each individual dealership or project. But I know that you're going to know exactly for every single one of those, when you're sitting down and you're doing there's your project budget, and you're going to budget that and go out for RFP and get bids and all that good stuff, and you're going to track your budget. But you're also going to big time be looking at your cash flow, and you're going to know exactly when you got to cut a check to pay for that. And that's the piece that I am having a complete disconnect. And to me, if a previous commission, even if it's us, if you approve a project, let's say for next year, and nothing happens on that project, in my opinion, that project needs to come back to us to be budgeted again. It should not be a scenario that once it has been approved as a project, it is forever there. Because circumstances change, and maybe the commission would decide, yes, we know that's a project down the road that we have to do, but as a commission now, we're going to postpone it. So it's just real screwy to me that it would be done this way. If we're looking at spending, if I take somewhere else on this, you had indicated it really wasn't just over the next 5 years, in a perfect world, if things happen as we hope it would, we're going to spend $92 million in new projects. Those are projects that are going to be approved for the first time in the 2019 budget in the next 4 years thereafter, plus another $22 million in projects that have been approved in the past. So what, that's 110 million thereabout?
114.
114 million. Okay, so it's $114 million. And, and I want to really understand where we're going to get the money to do that and how much of it, and if infrastructure is not in it, it needs to be, because we need to understand how much we're spending there and where that money's come from. But.
Can I ask you a question real quick?
Yes.
On this phone. The 21.
You're looking at the new one we just.
Yep.
Okay, hold on.
All right.
The new handout here? Yeah.
Yes.
Got it.
So the 23,875 projected 930. We're saying, because again, this is a new column prior years.
They
21 million of the 23 million has already been allocated to other projects, previous projects that are.
They were approved by previous commission.
So I understand. So of our 23 million, you keep talking about the bank account. So I have 23 million in the bank, and I've got 21 million of it spoken for, and I just committed to another 91 million.
You got it.
That's scary. I mean, and again, I'm not, listen.
We're trying to get a handle on it.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
not-
Just understand it.
I'm not to the point, and I think to the point on the revenue, Mr. Mitchell, do you agree with that statement? Because you gotta look at your face like, you.
Look at what?
Do you agree with that statement first? Does that statement happen?
What statement was that?
We'll have 23 million projected in 9/30 of 2018 in the R&R fund, 23,875,000.
That's because that's not here.
Which paper are you on, the one that
The
you
one
want
at the
to
very
pass?
last page.
Remember, we did that one.
Because that was my problem when I was looking, I actually had those.
The 23,875 is what you're asking
Yeah,
about?
that 28,375, yes, that's what we're projecting to have on hand in September. of this
Yes,
year.
because we still have about 3 million, or what, somewhere like that, we go out funded,
We,
yet to fund.
right, so on the new page that you guys have, the capital improvement plan summary, we have projects or dollars already spoken for, which none of them, when you say how you're gonna fund them, is 22,640,000. We have 7 million in electric, 3.4 in water, 7.8 in wastewater, 75,000 in reuse, and then 3.9 in common. When I go down here and I look at the financing, we are using cash of $21 million. Is that correct?
That's what it says.
So then that, if that money's spoken for, and this is what I've always kind of struggled with, I don't want to look at what is in my bank account, I want to look at what's available in my bank account. And if I look at this right, we have $2 million essentially, or $3 million available in our restricted fund. We will have.
Unrestricted.
Unrestricted, even though the cash is there, we've approved jobs, we're going out for RFP, the work's being done. Our bank account is basically 3 million of unspoken funds.
Okay.
Is that- I
It's
mean,
I don't
really
think that
five,
that's
money's gonna go
completely right.
back, money is for 6 months is going back in there at
Okay, so
3.6.
I get it.
So 5.
And again, I think all the stuff that would mean, if you've ever taken a tour of the facilities, I'm the first one to say we need all we can get as far as upgrading our facilities, and I'm glad that we've, I think we've increased 1.3 million in income for our employees in the last, bringing them up to current rate. I think we've done some good things. I've always questioned the rate study, and I think to Bernadette's point, is you sit there now and you look back and you go, in 2012, it's a lot of money to give up. We're looking at In 10 years, we're looking at a $159 million project with essentially $2 million plus what we're gonna accrue over the next 6 months in the bank. I know right now, with that financial situation, when I go to the bank, they tell me, pass, get out of my bank. It's different because of what we are, I understand that.
Correct.
But that seems a little lean to me. And again, I know we haven't spent the money, so you can reallocate it, we can stop a job.
Exactly.
We can say, okay, and you can bring it back and you can make adjustments. I get all that. My always concern, and my one question here is, I see a trend line of expense going like this. I don't see the revenue expense line moving with it evenly. And that's why, when I looked at here, that we only referred to again on the water treatment as the increase in the rates. I think, and again, considering we're looking at $159 million, we're gonna pay it back one way or another. Do we wanna borrow money, pay interest on it, or we just wanna start charging it now and collect it as we go so we get ahead of this thing? We're committing our ratepayers to $159 million plus 22, so $172 million over the next 10 years. It's time that we get real serious about looking at our rate study, because whether you borrow it or you raise the fee, the ratepayer still pays. And all I'm gonna tell you is the ratepayer pays more when you go borrow it. So I understand the logic of moving the money on priority, but we're already into that 10-year plan, and we're already moving things, and we got a huge project that Derek's drawn up, and it's not gonna be cheap. I looked at the water treatment facility, if I'm not mistaken, it was $8 million. I thought that was a $15 million number. So like I said, there was a lot of questions I had. You have $8 million in one, you have $6 million in the other in the osmosis plant, and then you have $8 million on the water treatment. So there's a lot of money here that we're getting ready to commit ourselves to. It's time to start raising the proper capital, not just one way as far as borrowing, but the other
Well, as
way.
we discussed, we are doing that rate study, and I hope to, not hope to, but it will be going out the door October 1.
Can I ask you a question? Again, I gotta believe these, what was the reason for not doing that?
There could be a myriad of reasons, but it was decided at the time that not to raise it. We raised the wastewater, I believe, 12.5%, and we raised well, it might have been some reclamation. It was a separate thing. I'm not quite sure on the reuse, but that was decided to do that at the time, and keep the rates as low as we could and move forward that way.
Because again, if the first thing that the ratepayer's gonna say, don't raise my rate, but when we obligate them to $174 million worth of debt, whether you like it or you don't, you're the ratepayer, you're on the hook for it. I just think we need to be forthright and say, this is what we need, this is why we're doing it, and that study needs to get done sooner than later.
Which is why I said that I would like to have staff calculate for us if we would have, I want to know the number that we gave up by not going with all the recommendations on the most recent rate study, because I think it's relevant, and I think that our ratepayers, especially if we go in and have another study done and we come to a decision that we're going to do an increase, we need to be as transparent as possible and be able to explain to our ratepayers, this is what we gave up in 2012. For that, that it's relevant, they need to understand it.
Can I ask one other thing too? Because, and again, you guys work in this just like I work in my dealership, and everything I look at looks very familiar to me. So if I showed it to you, it would look foreign as this looks to me. So that part I understand. But why wouldn't we, once we take a dollar and we allocate it to a project, why would we not reduce that R&R fund as to dollars allocated to a project? Why wouldn't there be another account that would be a sub-account or something, or a holding account, that once you approve the project and you approve the dollars, that you, or at least we're aware of it? Because this is the first time tonight, and that's not saying it's the first time you've made me aware of the $21 million in projects, but it's the first time it really kind of all come together for me of the, we've got right now 23, we're gonna have 23 million on hand, roughly 24, and we're obligated to 23 million, which we can change that number if we go, our bond financing, we went out this year and raised a little bit of money, we can put ourselves in a better cash position to buy ourselves some time on the rate stuff. There's a lot of things there that.
Right, also, if you raise rate, if rates
Yeah, I mean,
are.
so the two of them together can buy us a little bit of time to get that cash in, but I just think it's, for me, once we allocate $1 to the project, I don't have a problem with that. If I'm gonna go build something that's $10 million and I have money for it, I wanna know when I go there that the money's there. I don't wanna say, well, we spent that money, we're gonna need to go borrow. Doesn't mean a different account, it just needs to be identified. I would hope that we would do that moving forward, that money that's spoken for, of the 23,875 in the R&R fund, that if we chose, you took a project and said, I'm gonna put that on the back burner, that you would come back to us and say, that money that was spoken for, we're gonna pull that back, we're gonna push it out 3 years, we're gonna reallocate that money for Project X, and that would get approved here at the board, because those are big numbers. I mean, and again, in all transparency, being transparent to everybody, if I was a ratepayer, I would want to know that. Because you have people sitting there going, oh, you got 23 million. No one ever says you have 23 million that you've already got promised in projects and spent. No one ever tells me that. They just tell us how much money they got in the You guys are full of cash. You're flush of cash. And we're not.
Well, this is I understand exactly, and this is some of my frustration, Jack, because like if I look at the most recent audited financial statements, it shows that we had $29 million in unrestricted fund balance. That's the unrestricted R&R fund. That's what that is. Okay, so the way that it had been handled is that because we had this resolution that went into place at some point that said, hey, basically 8% of all of our billings go into this fund, and then at the end of the year, any net income that we have left goes in here. That was the thing that said, okay, that means it goes into the R&R fund, so it's designated for capital forever. But I don't think, we never got specific enough that to me, in that we have the option in the audited financial statements that in that unrestricted fund balance could be broken up between this is what truly designated and the details of what it's designated for is in note such and such. And then here's the stuff that we have left. So where I have some heartburn, because it's just not that anybody's doing anything wrong, but grasping it, is that I have never seen that, what I'm accustomed to seeing is that if you approve a project in 2016 and nothing happens on it, it doesn't just stay there. It's talked about when we do the budget for 2017 and say, hey, 2016, we budgeted $3 million for this thing. We didn't do it. You budget it again. Because then this commission is making the decision, are we gonna do it? Now, most of the things that we have, it's not like there's a choice. These are things that have to be done. But the timing of it and how you're gonna choose to pay for it, sometimes we do have some choices there. There is some planning that can go in and making those kind of decisions. And, so what I would like to see is, this is really big numbers and it's long-term stuff, but what I would really like to see, could we just get 2019 close? Like, I want to see, okay, what Derek explained to me, and I don't know if you have this, I have a worksheet that was given to me that's the analysis of the $22.6 million in prior year things. It's one sheet of paper, and I got it in my second meeting. And
I think we have it.
yeah, I think that the rest of the commissioners need to see the same thing that I have, but it talks about, that there's building improvements of $400,000, $3.5 million for the relocation of field maintenance and field operations. It breaks it down. Smyrna substation improvements are $3.334 million. Smyrna substation transformers are $2.75 million. It gives me the details of this, and what Derek explained to me is that at this point, some of this stuff has not at least something has started on this, even if it's only engaging a consultant to give you the specs that you need to be able to issue an RFP or go out for bid. Something has started on all of this, and what Derek also explained on this 22.6 million is that this stuff has got to happen. There's a bunch of stuff in here that if it doesn't happen, we're going to have developments are going to be built that are not going to have anything that's going to work in terms of utilities. I mean, there's some real important stuff here that has to happen. I'm not saying we're not going to do it. You know, it's just, you know,
So let me ask you a question. So when I look at the capital improvement plan, right, and then I see the allocation summary, and then you have the item E4, you have the description on the back pages. So you go to, again, I think moving forward, you have everything. So if you go to your, it would be page 40, it would be, because you have your summary, which is everything, and then you go to page 44, which it breaks down each department, and it has the dollars allocated, and then it has the item job number, like E43, electronic
Right.
enclosures, and then it tells you, you go over here and find out what it is. So is that what you're, because that to me is what, that tells me what we are doing.
this is only new stuff.
No, that's what I'm saying. So you want this in the rears. You want.
No, I want it the year that the check's going to be cut.
Okay.
You know, it's like, because it's a twofold, you got a couple, you got more than one thing going on here,
Right.
okay? It's more that, hey, you got specific projects that are approved, just in theory with an estimate of what they're gonna cost, you know, and this commission approves
Should be
them.
these projects.
Right, but, you know, like I said, when we're looking at this, we look at this capital improvement electric plan, it's only, these are only new projects being approved for the first time in 2019. It doesn't include any of the 22.6 million because it was approved in previous years. And it's confusing as all get out to me. I mean, I understand it better now, but the thing is
It
that,
should be in there with it.
well, yeah, it's a thing that, you know, and from a cash flow standpoint, especially since we're going to be losing a lot of senior management.
Right.
Ray's going to be retired, Bill's going to be gone. You know, we're talking $150 million over the next 10 years. That in addition to working with engineering and doing all the things that we do to figure out what has to be done and going out for bid and doing all of that, in addition to that, on our end and on the finance end, we gotta have the money available for Derek when he needs to do it. And so, and I wanna know how we're gonna get that accomplished. And we need to be more transparent with our ratepayers so that we can justify that if we're gonna do an increase, we got a doggone good reason. And we can show them clearly why we have to do it that way.
Right.
And it makes it easier for everyone because y'all are gonna be, Steph is gonna be getting a lot more phone calls than I am, I would imagine, if there's any kind of increase. You know, so, and it's even understanding that someone telling us, okay, we're gonna borrow the money, but it's like, well, how are we gonna do it? And what period of time are you thinking we're gonna finance it for? You know, I mean, rates are creeping up. You know, so we made this decision not to do a fee increases in 2012, they would have been effective 2013. And that was also a period when interest rates were low, a lot lower. You know, so the decisions that we made then, you know, are just moving the burden to ratepayers of today and into the future.
And again, obviously with the circumstances the way they are, I think a prioritization list, because you're gonna have to start really picking and choosing what your, you know, your priorities are. Because these aren't small dollar, you know, projects. Like and just because it was mentioned in your statement, you know, the $1.6 million we're talking about investing back in this place. Is that really priority? Is this where we're gonna keep this facility? If we're gonna move everything out there, I mean, those are things that I think, and I think this new person coming in, of the prioritization of these are the ones that are 911 need to get done, the monies and dollars and resources are allocated. A little clearer picture of what your prioritization is, because that's what you're telling me your process is, your strategy is that I do have 24 million, I do have projects allocated.
And prioritize.
Yeah, that we need to know what's prioritized. And if something comes off your 22 million, that was approved, and then we need to be aware of that. That's all. It's giving you a pretty big bank book to go play and I don't mean loosely, but you know what I'm saying, with our fiduciary responsibility is to make sure that we're providing oversight, that if you are making changes that significant, that we would make them with, we would approve your request.
Okay.
That we're all on board, you know what I'm saying? But I think right now with the dollars we're talking about, the 23 or 24 million that's out there, if there's gonna be changes there, or you foresee changes to those 23 or 24 million, and then anything tightening up in this 5-year plan that might change or fall down, that we would need to know. And I know that water treatment facility plan is when we get there, whether you like it, you're ready or not, you're going. So I would see a little clear priority list of what is coming down the pipe for us. And I think it would be very beneficial to the person coming in that's gonna replace you.
Well, and I do think that it's important moving forward that it shouldn't be that once a project is approved, it's forever approved. If a project is approved, but it has not been, I understand that, any expenses associated with that, like once a project is started, an RFP has gone out, we approve the expenditures, we approve the contracts, I get all that. But the thing is the way that it's been operating is that if 3 years ago a project was approved and just now we're getting to it, it will be, an RFP will be done or an RFQ, and that goes on the street, and there's a whole lot of work that's done there, and then staff comes to us and says, we did all this, we want to approve this now. It was approved 3 years ago. So there's been a lot of time and effort, spent on a project that maybe under the circumstances, the commission might say, but wait a minute, maybe, like you mentioned about throwing, and I don't know, maybe it is required, but throwing additional over $1 million in this building, maybe that's not what we want to do. But I feel like we're not participating in that conversation, because if it was approved in a previous year, it's a done deal. It's approved. And I have never seen that. I have always seen circumstances in which.
Even when you go to a lender, you have I don't get an unlimited time to build stuff. They want it done within a reasonable amount of time. I don't think it's unrealistic. And again, it's a 5-year plan. I think you guys know when you present that to us, I project to have this started and done in a reasonable amount of time. I gotta believe Derek's more than competent and sells ready to be able to project that. And then build yourself a little bit of wiggle room in there, as we all know that all of us are not really good at hitting timelines and building things. So, and because this, from what we've seen, and like I said, I don't want anybody to ever interpret this. I don't believe for 1 minute anybody that did anything that was not above board, or, I just think it doesn't tell the whole picture. We need to do a better job of that $22 million that's that's already approved. That has to be on this budget. It has to be on that last page. It has to be, that column that she added here. And then obviously to tighten up, and you've already got the other than the 23 million that's out there, of these pass or fail. These are the jobs we're gonna do. This is when we expect to have them done. This is a timeline of what, and I don't know how we approve something on that type of money without a timeline. Because everything we've done, we've asked, when do we start this? When do you see this being finished? So, is that, and again, I don't know, guys, so I'm asking for your input. Is it, what stops us from doing the things that we come to a meeting, we say we need this many dollars, we want to do this, and then all of a sudden it's 3 years later and we haven't done it? Why is?
Derek's really good at explaining that.
Okay.
I was just going to ask you.
Finally get him up here.
Touch on that.
No, I'm good, thanks. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Derek Wayne Scott, Director of Engineering. What I'm about to say might sound like a lot of excuses, so I apologize for that. You're asking for priorities and schedules on projects. That's a long list of projects to produce a schedule for. Not to say that it can't be done, it would just be a time-consuming endeavor. The delays in projects, or we'll just stick with delay, how about that? If I'm working on a project, and a good example of this would be Lift Station 4. I started Lift Station 4 in 2012, and we just finished it last year. That's 5 years to rebuild the lift station and get the project finished. That's a long time, and I recognize that. There are a lot of extenuating circumstances that cause distractions to me, my staff, in processing a project for my internal customers, such as the Dave Hoovers, the Mike Mines, the Tim Byerlys of the world. Those are my internal customers. I have external customers as well, that being the development community. And in the last 3 or 4 years, the development community has exploded. We have participated in a lot of meetings to explain our policies and procedures that they don't accept our statements, so we have to re-meet with their attorneys. All of that is time consuming. All of that I have to prepare for. All at the same time, I cannot focus on our capital plan. That's one reason that there is some delays to some of our projects. Other delays, we get consultants that don't perform the way I'd like them to perform, and I don't necessarily have the capacity here as a public entity to apply a lot of pressure on my consultants. I can't yell. I have to maintain a very high level of professionalism, and I'm relying on them to be professional, and a lot of times there's failure in that as well. I have 10 consultants that this board approved back in 2014, and in June or July of this year, there will be another 11 or 12 consultants that this board will approve that I can assign projects to. There's a new list of consultants, thankfully. I don't get to pick them. I have a committee, it's an RFP, and because I assign the work, Mr. Chairman, that's an interesting look. Because I assign the work to the consultants, I do not get to evaluate the consultants. A team of my colleagues evaluates the consultants, and I am handed the list of consultants. That's standard operating procedure, Mr. Chairman.
Can I ask you a question? 'Cause, and again, sometimes it's just as obvious as it is obvious. When I hear what you're telling me, I agree with you 100%. And I've said this in multiple meetings. You know, we are in a wood chopping contest, and we haven't given anybody an axe. I mean, we don't have the right amount of people. And I would say, again, as big as this project is, when you just described to me, keeping up with the development, doing the meetings, keeping everybody happy, managing your staff, and then, oh, by the way, this $159 million project here, I want to know everything about that also. That's mind-boggling. There comes a point where, you know, you've got enough people to manage that this probably needs its own set of eyes, its own person, its own, you know, I would think as far as when we look at this, again, you can only do so much. And we keep throwing stuff on your table, on your desk, and you can just keep stacking, and you can only do so much. And I've said this isn't the first meeting I sat in here and said, do we need more people? Because there is a lot of things. Every one of those things deserves the attention and professionalism that this body should give it, considering it's charging a rate, it's charging a fee, it's a level of service that we should provide the adequate. And like I said, I think listening to that explanation, I don't think it's an excuse at all. I think it's a very accurate truth. And I would just throw that out there that, you know, I wouldn't be opposed, Mr. Mitchell, if, you know, there was a little help here, that this probably needs a little bit more attention. Again, I don't want to get into your operations, and never do. But when you hear that, you kind of go, and again, I understand when you hire people, you gotta be able to keep them. You can't just, this is a great job for 4 years, but we don't need them at year 5. I get that. Right. But we can only be as good as a commission and a utilities body and a servicer of the community with the right resources, the adequate equipment, the right amount of people, and saving our way to that is not gonna get us there. We have to invest the right resources, and especially to go approach something like this, as what we're gonna encounter over the next 10 years. That's my 2 cents. That's an observation from the outside. I think you do a great job of trying to appease all those people. I think it's an impossible task. I think our department heads, oh, by the way, you gotta run your departments, but by the way, I need you to go develop the rest of the system for us. Most of you are probably pretty good at running your departments. I'm not sure how good you are at building stuff. If we are, it's an added bonus, but I think sometimes we ask a little more than maybe the staff's capable of giving us, and we stress that, and that's what results in people leaving. So that's an observation. You guys take it for what it's worth. But I think, Bernadette, you've made a good point. The dollars definitely have to be, the story has to be told a little more completely. I do believe, whether we're stressed or not stressed right now, we need to understand what the prioritization is of the capital projects. And I don't expect you to sit down and spend 4 days on it. Mr. Mitchell, you know within a 5-year window what these projects are. When you go through them, there's 2 pages on, I think, each department. When you look at the 5-year plan, you could sit there and go, just high priority, I mean red, yellow, green. High priority, caution's not, mid-level. Green is,
If I may, obviously, a lot of this will depend on growth.
right. No.
So priority part is a little hard to pinpoint, if Derek understands what I'm saying. Everything we put in here is needed if the projected growth happens.
Right.
Absolutely every bit of it is a priority. The timing as to what goes first, that depends on the shape of what's condition something's in, if we're replacing, whether it's new, the timing of where it's needed. Right now, the majority of stuff will be needed west of town, obviously. So the priority part is there. There is a listing back in there, and Derek may could fine tune it down on, all right, this project's going first, or whatever, second, third. But it depends, obviously, on a lot of external factors. So being able to pinpoint it down,
I think there's
in the existing 2019, what we've got, I'm sure he could tell you where his plans are probably to go with that. But there's a priority on all of it that's there.
But
To
you
say
see
you
the-
can't just number it down, you probably can. But we have to get this budget done by June 1st to the city.
Look, this is not I'd like to see that before we get to this to the city. I would want to see that moving forward so that we are looking at the plan, the capital plan, that we can clearly identify what's on the radar, what's on the horizon.
Absolutely, and
What's a little further out.
and-
That's all I'm asking.
And in talking about personnel, whether we need it, each of these were meeting, and I believe everyone was given all the personnel they asked for this year.
Okay?
And if growth goes beyond what the projections are, I will be coming back asking for more people and having to redo something on the budget.
Absolutely.
Could I interject something? Because I want to make sure, my understanding is that at least for the next couple years, the monies that we're looking to spend are really not growth-related. Because if they were growth-related, it would be coming out of restricted monies. That the majority of the things that we're looking at spending here is dealing with stuff we already have.
Correct.
Okay,
Right.
so I want that to be clear, because especially right now, we've got people in the community that are absolutely going crazy and very concerned about growth. And I don't want it to be thought that the lion's share of the next couple years, my understanding, all this money, we're looking at least other projects that were approved in previous years, 22.6 million. And the 22.8 million that you're asking us to approve as being 2019 projects, those are not growth related.
If I can clarify, what I was trying to state is for the personnel we've got.
Okay.
And our projects we've got, whether they are O&M, whatever, I'm not saying it's all growth.
Okay.
What I'm saying, if things continue to require more people, if we do need to bring in, if we get busier, I will have to come back possibly and ask for personnel. So I'm saying growth on that staff, on staff and, whether it's whatever may occur out there that causes that. Obviously, we are having in a growth spell and also having to replace a lot of things. The substation is a very good example. we're probably looking at about $6 million total out there or something.
Roughly $6 million in the substation expansion and the transformers.
Right, now, part of that is growth, because we're adding a transformer because of the new growth out there. But that's just a smaller part of that,
Okay.
that piece of the pie. But that's why I'm just trying to say, as far as growth, if things get busier and we have to come back with more personnel, you know, that will be done.
If I may, just address a few things, is, let me address Mr. Hoover's concern, is that while I'm building his new project, he still has to operate it. And that causes a lot of headaches. The example of that is Lift Station 60, which is our regional lift station. What number did you use, 80%? 80% of our wastewater flows through Lift Station 60. So I'll call up Mr. Hoover. Mr. Hoover, I need to shut down Lift Station 60 so I can replace the automatic transfer switch. Okay, you have 5 minutes. Can't replace an automatic transfer switch in 5 minutes. Can we stretch it to 10? No, I need more than 10 minutes. So a project that sounds as simple as let's replace the automatic transfer switch, we start wrapping our heads around it and going, okay, well, we really need to bypass it while the station's down. So how do we do that? Oh, good, there's a bypass port. Oh, wait, it's undersized. So now I have to put in a new bypass port that can meet the flow demands for 80% of our wastewater flow, and then pump it, and then project creep. That's part of it too. But that is an important aspect, is that when I'm building Mr. Hoover's new hypochlorite conversion at the water plant, he still has to provide and produce water. While the construction project is ongoing, we just went through this on his wastewater conversion for hypochlorite. We had to set up temporary systems, and the contractor was on board with that, and it went very well. The other thing I'd like to point out is in the prior years, the $22.64 million, a lot of those projects are already in the works, to the tune of we're out to bid for transformers right now. We're responding to questions. That's $2 million out of the $22.64 million. The fleet maintenance relocation is got a price tag of $3.5 million. My consultants have plenty of emails in my inbox when I got back from vacation, and that RSQ has already been drafted, and that's in the works to go out, so we'll be spending money there as well. And if I'm not mistaken, another big ticket item is the rehabilitation of Lift Station 11 and some of the other systems. Last month, this board approved nearly a $1 million system improvement that's going to come out of that $22.64 million. So a lot of that money is, if you want to know when I'm going to write the check, as soon as I can.
Well, and I understand that, and you really helped me understand that. But what I also learned is that, number one, you knew better than anybody in this organization when stuff was going to happen. And because of all the other demands on your time, you know, all the things that you went through, that sometimes we've had instances where you said, hey, if you have the time, all these things really need to happen, this 22, and a lot of them are going on. So that's why I'm saying that what I want to see, you know, there's your project budget and there's your 5-year forecast. That's a completely different animal. Because then we got the budget that we're adopting for the year ended 9/30/19 that needs to show this is based on our best educated guess and reasoning. This is how much money we're actually going to spend, and this is where we're going to get the money to do it. That needs to be a separate thing that we're approving. And we do it again in the next year where we readdress, where we say, yeah, we know that 3 years ago we approved a certain project, okay? But it's not done or it hasn't started, you know, and because we don't actually necessarily know, like what you said, we don't know we got $22.6 million worth of stuff, but we don't really know how that $22.6 million how much of it is truly committed, that actually the definition of committed on an audited financial statement is you have a signed contract and they started work. And we don't get that info. So, you know, just to kind of really cut to the chase, I think that what we need to have before we take this to the city, what I want to see is I want to see a piece of paper that says, okay, this is the money in capital projects. You know, just like we have this one sheet of paper that I'm hoping my other commissioners need to get this, that clearly delineates the 22.6 million in prior year projects. We need one just like this for the 22.8 that you're saying is going to be for 2019. And maybe, it doesn't sound like it's very realistic for us to expect that all of the 22.6 plus the 22.8 is all going to be paid for and completed by 9/30/19. I think in a perfect world, we would really like that to be the case, but it sounds like realistically, that's not going to happen. With our existing staff, with our existing responsibilities, it's not going to happen. So I think we need a better job of determining what are those checks that we're going to have to cut and where we're going to get the money to do that. I don't have a problem with the operating budget. This is the one that gives me heartburn. And I wouldn't have a problem with it. You know, if we had $150 million sitting in unrestricted fund balance and we had all the cash to do this, I would be a lot less concerned. But we don't. So that's the end of my spiel.
Derek, you're right. I had a little problem back there when you made the statement that you don't get to pick our consultants. Explain to me how this happens that we don't get to pick them or you don't get to pick them.
Or at least be on the committee.
Because I assign the projects to the consultants. Okay, I am then closely tied to who gets what contract, how big. I negotiate individually with each consultant for a specific project's contract. Because I am that tied to a specific consultant, it's not reasonable or ethical for me to be on the committee or to make the selection so that I can't pick the company that I used to work for that my best buddy is the president of and then assign him a bunch of big contracts.
Build a firewall.
It's a firewall.
Yeah. But let me ask you this.
And it works very well.
Okay, because that's what, you made it sound like you were not happy with the list of vendors you had. That's the way I took it.
Okay.
That's why you
So
I
that's
got
not
my
my
face
fault.
screwed up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I got it. All right.
It's not like that at all. It's not like that at all.
Wait. Derek, finish. You're happy with your consultants,
Yes.
even though some of them don't perform as you would want them to.
Correct.
Why can't we get rid of those that don't perform the way you want them to?
We just don't assign them the bigger contracts. And then that's why I can't be on the selection committee.
Mr.
And
Davenport, go ahead.
it's a 4-year cycle. We can only contract with each firm for 4 years. One consulting firm did not perform, and we did not renew their contract for the last 2 years. So it's a renewable, every year it's a renewable contract for up to 4 years. And those consultants that don't perform to our minimum expectations do not get,
So you can weed them out?
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Davenport, you got a question?
It's incomprehensible to me how it takes 5 years to build a lift station. And I've done enough development, millions of dollars, and I've been blessed. And I've worked with a lot of people. But for 5 years on lift station, these consultants or vendors, I personally, I think we need to be a part of that because it's all coming back to us. It comes back to us with the public being upset that we're not, and I'm not getting on you, Derek. I'm not getting on anybody. I'm just saying these selections, if these people aren't performing, there are a hell of a lot of people out there that will perform, so let's go with some new ones or change things up.
Well-
I would like to know the vendors that did that 5 years. I'd like to see that personally, if I could, Mr. Richard. I'd like to see those vendors on that and the consultants.
Mr. Davenport, that was an in-house project that we did.
There he is.
So you're looking at them. It was, my first year here, we paid a consultant $100,000 to design a lift station replacement project. Coming from the private sector, I thought that was ridiculous. We can design our own lift stations in-house. Mr. Hoover's team is expert in keeping these stations running despite their age. And the only reason that those types of projects can get strung out is because of his operational staff. So it is, the development community really went bonkers in the last several years, and their focus and their needs were pretty excessive, so.
One more thing, I'm gonna agree, I heard what Jack said a while ago, but I can see almost that we could have, where you're working with the developers, or you're working with the community and you're in-house, we could almost have another in-house, looking at another in-house engineer to be on top of all these projects. Because it's hard on you, I can see it, and we all can.
Gray hair.
Yeah, right. There, I'm looking at the bottom of this CIP funding here, and it says deficit to be funded by alternate sources, 51 million bucks. What are the alternate sources that we're thinking about?
Revenue certificates or bonds.
Financial market.
I'm
You got-
sorry, can't hear you.
Revenue
You gotta
cert-
talk up, Lori, because it.
Revenue certificates or bonds.
And then something that Commissioner Britz Parker touched on is if the rate
Rate.
study comes back and says increase rates.
Or a combination of the two.
Yes.
Yeah, and again, that's why I think we're not gonna come up with a concrete, final, never can be modified 5-year plan today. You know, we're gonna have new top management, you know, when Ray's gone and when we get a new CFO. But I think that at a minimum, what we need to, let's tackle 9/30/19. That between now and 9/30/19, this is the money that's gonna go out the door in these capital projects, and here's how we're gonna pay for them. And if we are going to go into debt to fund them, let us know right now your best decision on how to get that done. And that's not just saying alternate sources, it's not saying revenue certificates or bonds, it's saying, we think we're gonna do this with bonds payable over this period of time, and this is about what we think the rate's gonna be. Because that's also part of the budget. Because if we borrow that money, we're gonna have to start paying it back. And that piece needs to be in the budget. Not just the interest that's gonna show up as an expense, but the principal payments that are gonna be paid on that debt. It's a cash flow analysis, and for budget purposes, it really needs to all go back to cash. Here's all the cash in and here's all the cash out, even though I know some of the cash out is not gonna be an expense, it's gonna be a payment of debt, or it's gonna be, you know, equipment or something that's gonna be capitalized. Or maybe a decision being made that, you know, as opposed to paying cash on some of these other things that are shorter term, maybe we should be, you know, borrowing money on some of these things that could be payable over a shorter term that is also less expensive because we don't have all the legal costs and everything associated with floating a bond. I mean, you know, and it's just, you know, right now, I think all we're really trying to accomplish is, let's just look at 1 year. You know, give us some really good details on how you're gonna make it work through 9/30/19. And that should be part of our budget. And then, you know, and then we'll delve into this again later when we have new management
And, you know, and we can come up with a plan that is concrete that we all feel more comfortable with. But, you know, right now, I just think it's, I think it's really lacking.
If I may.
Well, Mr. Go ahead. Over here, Ray, go ahead.
We have, over the last year, gone through this, and this 2019 is built on what is projected to be needed. Obviously, it's a projection with the growth happening. So that is all needed, and it will need to be done. Circumstances may dictate something that if something shifts out here and a developer doesn't get something done, and they may be doing an infrastructure project and working with us, that may affect whether it's done or not.
Sure.
So it's a projection, and there's no way we're going to tie it down as tight as what you're asking for. You can say, this is what we're planning. You don't know if it's going to be. Weather can happen, hurricanes can happen, anything can happen. So, I mean, this has been planned out and looked at by staff who knows the job, who knows what they're doing, and have come up with these numbers from consultants and looking at it. And this is the thing, not to say I can't get with Derek and Laura and tighten this down a little bit, but you're not going to be able to tighten it down and say this is exactly the projects that'll happen, and this is how much money is going to go out the door in 2019. You can't do it.
Then we got to get a lot better at it,
Can I-
Mr. Mitchell.
No, we are.
Can
Because
can I
understand-
reiterate
Whoa,
here?
whoa,
Can I say
Not
something?
everybody at once. You finished, Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Go ahead, Lori.
Every month, there's 2 pages in your financial statements. One of them tells you how much we spent towards capital projects, whether it be restricted, infrastructure, unrestricted. Every month, it's how much capital went into it, how much checks we cut for, how much inventory went to a project, what the balance of committed costs are, what the balance of the unrestricted, the restricted, and the infrastructure. That is provided every month in detail, and then there's the other page that we created for you that shows how much checks we cut for the month. I mean,
But this is the first year, Lori, that we have to borrow money.
Hang on a minute.
Well-
Mr. Davenport had a comment. Go ahead, Mr. Davenport. Go ahead.
What's the first year for the?
I would like if Bernadette would explain, one more, see it in writing, what you said a while ago. As Jack made the statement, it's become clearer to me. To understand the 22.6 million, even better, of what's proposed, versus what's been committed, and how much cash we have. I'd like to hear that. I don't need the statement. If we could get that to Mr. Mitchell and get it out to us, I'd like to see that on paper. That'd make even more, I'd study a little bit. The other thing is, you know, we're sitting here, and there's other things that we got concerned about. I love a cash flow budget. As a small businessman or business person, I mean, I guarantee you, your partner, Terry Taylor, has a cash flow budget. He's a zillionaire. I guarantee you do. I do. And that's just good practical business. I don't care who you are, because if you get caught, and like you said, Mr. Mitchell, we don't know if there's going to be a hurricane. We don't know if there's going to be a earthquake, fire's going to shoot out of the ground or whatever. We just don't know. But that's what we figure out when it happens. Okay, what do we do now? But I love a cash flow budget, just to say, okay, now this is what we got. Even though we don't know which projects we want to pick, let's try to fine tune it and figure it out. I love that, Bernadette. I think it's a great idea. I'm very supportive of that.
Go ahead, Lori.
I'm through.
Okay.
I think to answer Commissioner Britz Parker's question is in 2019, we're anticipating a loan.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear it. 2019?
2019 was the answer to your question, is when we would expect to go for a bond or a loan or something of that nature.
We're projecting 10.6 million, so that's.
Yes,
It's not, yeah,
that is
I mean, we're
true.
projecting
Correct.
that, so it's not a.
So you're,
Here's what, this is what, I guess, I didn't make myself clear, and I understand where you sit and the clarity that you look through it, because it's what you do. From the people that don't have that luxury of doing it, it is a little harder to kind of go find all the, you know what I'm saying? I think that just putting it together a little bit better is what we're trying to figure out. Because as we go, we're gonna attack a $160, $70 million project. I don't wanna have to go 3 or 4 different places to find it all. I just wanna kinda have it in one area each time. And again, because if you had to take, before we received this, if you had to understand where we're at with our cash position, you could not achieve it. Do we agree on that at least? Us sitting up here, without this addendum that you've given us, we would not know our cash position.
Correct.
Is that a fair statement?
That's a fair statement.
So, not that you did that intentionally to us.
Of course not.
Right, that, I just, like I said, because I was going through it, and the hard part for me is like, I circled it. I'm not as articulate as she is about looking at the numbers, so I'm drawing numbers and.
You're doing great, Jack.
I couldn't figure out what of the 23 million have we already allocated. That's all it was. If this would have been there earlier, it would have been a lot easier. Because I said, oh, we have 23 million and just projected in, September, we have 22 million allocated. I understand it's not as easy as it's going to be done March of 2016. I get all that. I think we can be a little tighter with our predictions, maybe not 5 years, but, within a 24-month period. That's all I'm saying. And for us, that's what we couldn't draw that conclusion that we just talked about. And that's where my struggle was. You've explained a lot to me on the budget where, I didn't know that. I'll be the first to raise your hand that I didn't know in that page that I could go see that as clearly as you have it. So,
Yes.
And sometimes it's just conversation. If we don't ask questions and we don't do our job, which is oversight, we can't figure it out. We just look at it and beat our heads against the wall in the weekend or week that we have trying to figure it out. So it's not that please don't ever take it as I'm implying something wrong. I just I don't want to spend as much time as I've spent trying to get here as I did. And that's all I'm trying to, I guess, say. So, I would defer to you to what it looks like in working with them. I think you get it. I mean, it's really, because you've got it here. You've got your sheet there that's in front of you that basically is a description of the 22 million, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So really,
The prior year projects, I have a great sheet that is explaining what they are. And Derek has explained to me, some of these have been done the pike for a while. And would it be a fair statement that by 9/30/19, you think that the lion's share of these will be completed, Derek? Not just in a perfect world.
I need to see the list before I
Okay.
answer the question in its entirety, if I can steal it back from Brian and Lori.
Can we get somebody to run 4 or 5 copies of
Maybe,
that?
could we do that right now for the,
You wanna-
guys
So
have
we
it?
have.
Thank you, Brett.
Ready?
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
another thing that going back and reading my notes and studying, and just to bring it up, I'm concerned where we are with not knowing our litigation or what lawsuits or what's going on there. That's pretty big uncertainty, is my understanding from the memos I've read, and what we've been in touch with. It's something I'd like to see us get our head around that. Where are we on lawsuits, litigation, what's
That's-
going on there?
That's a little different
Yeah.
situation, obviously, but that has all been turned over to Attorney Cloud.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he will be doing an
That's a question
update,
you need
I'm
to
sure.
ask.
You'd have to ask him.
Okay. Yeah, he's not here. And let's-
Thank you.
we
I'm
got-
just
No,
thinking
I
about
understand.
money.
Right, I understand. When I see 51 million bucks in parentheses,
That's a good question.
I just, and unfortunately, I was one of the people that made that decision in 2012. I don't think that I wasn't paying attention.
Well,
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir, go ahead.
I was here in 2012, I think.
No,
And I think I started right after that. or
you were the next year.
something. I was the next year, okay. The important thing is, back then, there were a whole different set of market dynamics. We were going through the cycles. The cyclical things were coming to roost. We had ratepayers that weren't paying their bills. We had no growth. We had an economic situation that was really very, very frustrating. However, I'm all for what we're trying to do going forward. As market dynamics always change. And you always can look back and say, well, I didn't expect that, or now we look back and say, well, we should have paid more attention to it. At the time, you do what you think is the best to do. But today, we have the opportunity to get a lot more transparent, put some more numbers together. Source and use of funds is the way I used to think of cash flow analysis.
There you go.
On a monthly basis. You know, we sat down every month and went to source and use of funds, including capital projects as well as personnel or legal issues. I mean, that's what you do. So we can do all that and make it better for all of us. And I think we got the people here that can make it happen, and we're certainly now are providing the resources. We were holding to 155 people back in 2010 or 12 or 13 or whatever it was, Chairman Greenbaum. We wouldn't even go beyond because we were concerned and we were trying to reduce debt and recondition our debt or take better example of the marketplace rates. You know, we resourced and changed some structure with respect to our debt. But anyway, here we are today, and going forward, we've got to get this rate study done and be thinking about exactly what we've been kicking around here tonight.
Let me ask you a question. Because we had the rate study done and did not use any of the information to make an increase, can we just make an increase now without having a new rate study?
I'm sure that does expire.
We could be suspected, yeah, I think.
Okay, I mean, you know,
Gotta do
we
the research.
paid the $140,000 for it.
How about an emphatic no?
Yeah.
Well, that's not the answer I want, Derek, but if that's what it is, that's all right.
We got to get the research and the data
All right.
to support it.
And so we're
And we'll make better decisions, Mr.
Well,
Greenbaum.
the thing is that you're a year down the road until you can make that increase. Is that correct? By the time you ask
Yeah.
for a
Yeah.
RFP or an RFQ, they do the study and we get through it and we do all
So
the.
9/30/20 is gonna be the first year that we would be looking at an increase,
So you're down.
probably.
And we have to disclose it, go through. the
Yeah,
period
and
of
so you're
time.
down another couple of $1 million.
What I need to do is that might be a contract that I am able to assign to a consultant and not do a specific RSQ for it. Because some of our consultants are going to have the ability to perform a rate study. And if that's the case, we would save several months in RSQ process, and it would just be a contract negotiation that would come before this board.
All right, then let me ask.
But I do need to do a little bit of research on that to make sure that that's appropriate.
Do you have time between now and Monday night to do that?
Tuesday.
To do,
To look and see
Yes,
if
yes.
if you can in fact do a abbreviated so that we can get this rate study in the books.
yeah, ideally what would happen is I don't have to do an RSQ. I save those 3-4 months of evaluations and preparation. Negotiate a contract, bring that contract to this board at its regular September meeting. The monies are allocated for the fiscal year of 19. We wouldn't be charging anything until October of 18, the start of the fiscal year, and that would be the quickest available time that we would be able to do that. Did that make sense?
Because of
You could
budgetary
save us
constraints.
3-4 months.
I wouldn't be spending any of the money until the fiscal year starts, but I can
Where
get the
it's budgeted
contract
for.
approved before then.
Okay,
Just saves us 3-4 months.
Yeah,
so you're gonna save us 3 or 4 months, and you can have that information for us for next Monday night?
yes.
So everybody, you're gonna be ready to make a decision for Monday night.
It'll be Tuesday night, sir.
We'll know more.
Tuesday night, sorry, thank you, Derek. All right,
So back to the budget, would we want to add, and again, I guess if you take these two, and kind of pull them together, because this explains the prior year's column. If you put that together and then you reconcile that last page, would that kind of get you where you would be comfortable?
Well, that if we end up being in a negative, that I want more information other than alternate sources telling me how we're gonna borrow the money.
We will be contacting bond counsel and
There's
determining
two
that.
ways to do it.
You know, where maybe, like you said, revenue bonds or whatever,
With a bank.
revenue certificates.
Who's the bond
It will
counsel?
be one or the other. Peter Dame, I believe. is
Peter
his
Dame.
name. Yeah, very good. He's worked with us for years. I think the last, we did was 10 million back
2013, we got two
2012 or
debt,
13.
two of them.
Yeah.
Do you have a question, Mr. Davenport?
No, sir.
Okay. Okay, so,
Mr. Chairman,
yeah, go ahead, Derek.
if I could just get a summary from the board as far as what exactly they want done for Monday night, Tuesday night, sorry.
Okay. It's my understanding that you told us that you could eliminate 3 or 4 months of the process of getting a rate study done so that we could make a decision on it to raise or not raise the rates or what portion thereof. Is that a correct statement?
I'm going to get you an answer as to whether or not an RSQ process needs to be followed or if I can assign a contract.
Yes.
Okay,
That's what you're gonna give us Monday night,
correct.
Yes,
or
sir.
Tuesday night.
Tuesday night.
Okay, that's what I'm looking for.
Okay.
Does everybody sitting up here agree? Let me shake your head, let me,
Yeah, well, I mean, I wanna know where we're at with that. That doesn't mean necessarily we're gonna elect to do it, but I'd like to know the scenario. Our attorney will also be here, yeah.
So,
Yeah, I
So-
think that's simple, but my real question then to the board is, what tweaks to the budget do we need to do between now and next Tuesday
No, to be able to provide it by Friday,
to be able to provide it by Friday?
which
Excuse me,
you've
thank
all
you.
asked.
Bernadette?
Well, the entire commission now has this sheet of paper, which I'm assuming, Derek, that you look at the sheet of paper and you're comfortable with it as it relates to prior year projects, the total 22.64 million?
Yes,
Okay, and then we have one similar to this for what we're saying our 2019 projects,
Well,
the
that's in the
22.861
budget.
million?
You can
But I like this one sheet of paper,
rework it.
yeah.
Okay.
Or even put
okay?
it side by side.
And that what these are end up being, or in addition to that, you say, okay, we've got 44 million and change, but here's the stuff that we think by 9/30/19, that those projects are really happening.
Okay.
You know, because it's the cash flow piece. I want to understand the cash flow piece.
We need to
And a priority
cash flow.
of the projects.
Put it in.
Okay, you two are on the same page and understand that you're okay and you're okay?
I believe so.
Okay,
No.
Okay, Jack, go ahead.
I'm fine.
What's
Okay.
the board's pleasure in a priority? A, B, C, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, green,
Something
yellow,
we can understand.
How you ever want to
Numbers.
do it, Derek?
Son-
Number 1, number 2, number 3.
numbers?
Numbers. A's and B's get misinterpreted.
The tough decisions we make up here. Numbers or letters?
It makes a difference sometimes, Jack.
Oh, yeah, you can't do, we want emojis.
You might have to get a younger engineer to do that.
Okay.
Can you help with that, please? Thanks.
You've got that all written down, Derek? You ready?
I got it,
We're gonna be here late.
I got it written down.
And you have nothing to do for the
You
next
can't ever
2 days.
leave.
You are at our...
I'll clear my schedule, Lori, don't worry about it.
Oh, yeah.
3 left on it.
Okay, so then by Friday, you'll have 2 of these. One for the existing projects that are outstanding, one for fiscal year 19. Both will have priorities.
And it's
And,
like it's a cash flow.
okay,
You know, to say, okay, so
And
but
then-
we anticipate, here's the money that's gonna go out the door related to these, and if we have a shortfall, how we're gonna pay for it.
and then more detail on the shortfall and how we're going to overcome
What your
it.
proposal is and what we're gonna do, yeah.
Your projected 10 million right now that we're borrowing. Is that going to change?
It should not.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Is that, I mean, that's the revenue, right?
Well, we'll discuss that. real quick.
Okay, all right, just wanted to-
Identify the 10 million opportunities.
And then I guess, Lori, you had indicated that the other changes we talked about that were corrections to the budget document that we have.
You'll get a
You've
complete
already
new-
made those, so maybe you could, I know when convenient, could you get those to, so that I could look at them?
Well, I was going to get a new complete book with,
Okay,
Yeah, we'll change the draft watermark, make the corrections that have already been discussed, and
Okay.
reissue the book with the corrections made,
okay.
as I understand it, by Friday.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Derek's got a new title. He's an engineer, assistant accounting.
He does it all.
Yeah, he got a new hat on. Thank you, Derek.
You're welcome. I should have fell off the mountain in Peru.
Do we have anything else from you, Lori?
nope, no.
Okay.
She's loving her job.
Okay, do we, number 2 here, Florida statute? Chapter, voting conflicts from you, Mrs. Fritz Parker?
I'm sorry, I didn't even. look.
Yeah, I
You
thought
were-
that.
I don't
Mr.
really have
Cloud-
anything to
I thought
say.
Mr. Cloud would be here, but I believe we could read it in.
Do you want to do this for next Tuesday night?
Sure.
No, I think it has to be done tonight, doesn't it?
It is supposed to be,
It's the next meeting.
by statute, it's supposed to be read into the record at the next meeting. So I can, it's just a summary of what it is.
Go ahead.
Sure, why don't you do that? Thank you.
Okay, no problem. It's Form 8B, Memorandum of Voting Conflict for county, municipal, and other local public officers. It's for Bernadette Fritz Parker. The disclosure is of interest, and the summary states the CPA firm I retired from in November 2016, James Moore and Company, submitted a proposal to provide audit services to the Utilities Commission, East Smyrna Beach. Although I am no longer associated with the firm, I am receiving repayments of my capital contribution in the form of periodic payments. Accordingly, based on CEO 1404, I removed myself from voting on the auditor contract. The proportionate small size of my capital contribution payments relative to the size of the company and the fact that it is already a vested right triggered the application of section 112.316 Florida statutes to negate any conflict of interest. And it is signed by her on, I think it's 5/2/18.
I think it's a 7.
Okay, sorry.
Are you sure?
That's okay.
Are you sure you're not a doctor and an accountant? God, an accountant?
It gets worse and worse.
My accounting professor would have had something to say to you, Mrs. Fritz Parker.
I bet.
Anything else for the good of the organization?
Thank
Mr.
you,
Mitchell?
Debbie.
Mr. Mitchell?
No, sir.
Lee?
I'm good.
Bernadette?
Nope.
Jack? Mr. Davenport?
No, sir.
Anybody there? You guys? Thank you. Thank you all. We've had enough fun for tonight. We're adjourned.
Thank you.